How are you?
Yeah, good. You're going to be out of lockdown before you know it.
Yeah, I got
All that.
another 3 days. It's hard.
Okay.
Tammy's got another week after this, and it's just she was having a really bad day yesterday.
Okay.
She had some tears in her eyes yesterday. She was
Oh,
struggling.
shame.
I think she's a little better
Yeah.
today, but
Okay.
it's not easy. You know,
No.
it's surreal being in this hotel room. I mean, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. In 54 years of living, I've
Yeah.
never been in a hotel room for
Yeah.
12 days straight. It'll be 14 when this is over. Can't open the windows, can't go out the
Yeah.
door, haven't talked to anybody face to face in 12
Yeah.
days. It's
Yeah.
just it's surreal. And then they put the food outside the door. There's a little stool there, and then they rap on the door. You feel like in these movies, where you're
Yeah. Like something in
the
the prison
the
cell.
prison. You're up against the wall, and you're etching the number of days on the wall,
Yeah.
and you hear the rap, and then they slide the food underneath, and
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah. No, that must be very weird. We've got roam of our house and our garden, at
yeah.
least at the back.
See, that would
Um,
be, when this first started a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, Almond, my daughter,
yeah.
she was one of the first ones. Like, she was like on day one, the day where they instituted a quarantine for people landing in Hong Kong. And they put a wristband on her, and she had to do 7 days at our
Yeah.
house, and she couldn't leave the
Yeah.
house for 7 days.
Yeah.
And at the end
Yeah.
of 7 days, she got a text message that she could remove the band and she's free to go. And
Yeah.
we were thinking at the time, this is barbaric. 7 days in your house, Now, oh my God, what I wouldn't give to be in my own house.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just crazy.
You guys so who had COVID over there?
Four of them. So three of the kids and Gina. And then Jared and I, my oldest, are still negative.
Is that because you think because you're vaxxed, or?
Well, no, I don't know. It must be my it must be my healing ministry, Steve.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you can still get it even if you're vaxxed.
Yeah. So Gina's been vaccinated and she still got it, which was obviously partly why I responded to the post that I'd seen on your stuff, because I had I had firsthand knowledge, but also I'd been tracking that a little bit to see where it was going, because I've seen quite a lot of people have said, well, people are still getting sick even if they have the vaccine, so why should they have the vaccine? I'm like, well, it's most certainly never been advertised that the vaccine would stop you getting it. It's always been advertised as it would, well, most certainly in terms of research, is that it would just stop you getting it badly.
Yeah, that was the primary way that I understood it. But then recently, I've been seeing articles that said, yes, you can certainly still get it while you're vaxxed, but the statistics are coming in that the transmission rates are noticeably lower for people that are vaxxed. So all around, it's it's probably a good idea if everybody gets vaxxed, and then it becomes not as big a deal. It becomes the flu then.
Yeah, I think there's still, I see the US are vaccinating up till, well, down to the age of 12, which I've got some reservations about going that low. I'd most certainly want to see my kids through growth and development before they take the vax.
Hong Kong's gone to 12 years old.
There's definitely lots of questions still around there. Okay. Yeah, I think there's still a lot of questions out on that. I'm not convinced. I guess 3 of my 4 have now had it, so it becomes less of an issue. There definitely are hormonal issues with AstraZeneca. They're not what, and actually it's being reported in menstrual cycles. There's definitely some kind of hormonal impact.
Sure.
And I think that it's the kids at such low risk.
And that's the way I feel too. Like, even when people were saying in the States, Ethan's 10, but they might reduce it to 10. And Tammy's like, no, even if they reduced it to 10, he's not getting a vaccine at 10. And we're proponents of vaccination. We're not a part of the anti-vax. But
no, likewise.
Yeah, I agree. It came really fast. Obviously, vaccines in the past that have been developed over time, polio vaccines, is that you want your kids getting those types of vaccines. And I'm sure in 4 or 5 years, some of the kinks are going to be worked out. I've joked I was one of the first to take the vax in Hong Kong because I was like, I've had my kids already. Doesn't matter, you know?
No, same. I mean, initially I wasn't pro. I wasn't. I think because the risk in my age group was also still so low. Going, well, I'd probably just prefer to get natural immunity. We know there are longer term effects when people get vaccinated, and what that does to overall immunity later on, not necessarily personally, but even if you want to look at herd immunity stuff.
One of the things that's made the coronavirus challenging and why we have a lot of the issues with pro and con and all this is the mortality rate is just low enough and just high enough that it's a very real issue, yet it's not quite, 1 to 2% is, if it was like 5% or 6%, people would be lining up to get that vaccine. People would be staying in their homes. They would be, it would be a completely different situation. But there's something about it being around 1 to 2% of mostly the elderly that has people going, well, is it just a bad flu? And, the flu kills this many every year and that's not being reported. And we've all heard the people in the pubs who tell us the real statistics. And, and it's some of those are valid arguments at times. I've found myself in the last 2 years vacillating between the two, taking it very seriously and then thinking, are we over compensating here?
It is quite hard to keep knowing where the line is. Because isn't that the difficulty, is that it does shift and change.
Well, I think now that the vaccine's out, I read a good article just before I went to the States that said, at least among developing nations, obviously among developed nations, obviously it'll be different in developing nations who have their own challenges. But in developed nations, they said that it's almost becoming a polarization of some countries, Australia, New Zealand, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan. Some of these countries are, any COVID case is cause for lockdown. They're going for zero numbers. Whereas now that there's vaccines, the UK, the US, a lot of Western Europe, a lot of the developed nations, we need to take precautions. We need to be mindful. We need to promote vaccinations, but we also got to get business going again. People got to live their lives. And that dichotomy was not made more apparent to me than when I was in the States, and I'd just come from Hong Kong. I'm at the airport, Steve, and there's it's a ghost town there. You know Hong Kong airport. I mean, busy, one of the busiest in the world. Duty free, restaurants, bars, blah blah blah. Ghost town, except for a couple gates open for the minimal flights going out. Duty free. Not only is duty free closed, but all the shelves are bare. I mean, it's depressing. Wow. It's like in one of these post-apocalyptic movies. Then I land in Dallas Fort Worth in America, and it's man, the airport's buzzing, bars are going, restaurants are going. Yes, people have masks on, and there's announcements over the PA that say, federal law requires that on airport property, everybody has to wear a mask, and violators are subject to a fine and blah, 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 blah. But other than everyone wearing a mask, it's open for business. And then going from 3 weeks in the States where, we'd go into stores and some people would have masks on, and there'd be signs saying we encourage people to wear masks and to socially distance. Like there's very much a visible reminder that we have to be taking some precautions. Other than that, it was pretty much business as usual. I'd say it was 95%. We went to a baseball game, 3,000 people were there. Then we land back in Hong Kong again, and it's like pandemic central. People are dressing, they got the full gear on, they're putting us in a van, taking us to quarantine. I feel like we're astronauts who just came back from the moon, and they're sticking us in this little, So it's just the dichotomy is there.
How do you think, if I think back, and 6 months ago, the US was just in turmoil over Corona. I mean, okay, presidency is, this combination of Trump and, it was, and the US in this free downfall. Now I realize that there's probably a big whack in the economy, but hearing what you're saying, I've got family who are traveling the US at the moment, and seeing their photos, and I'm just like, so what happened? I mean, how did they've turned whatever around in 6 months? It looks completely different. Actually, I don't even know when last I don't think I've heard anything about Biden since he came into power. There's no Trump pomp. It's just got on with the business.
Isn't it wonderful? I love not knowing what the president is up to. I don't need to know every single tweet and every single proclamation made by the president of the United States. I love that we have a boring old white man who's behind the scenes keeping things going.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, obviously it's a success story. I mean, the UK was, even this week, they've talked about how they are going to be, the first country in the world to try and drop all this kind of lockdown stuff and work with. And I'm like, have you guys gone across the water? Because the US has done this quite a few months ago, and guess what? They're not waiting for vaccines like we are. The vaccines are going stale before people are getting there. So it's a pretty astounding story when you look at, I mean, the size of the population, the size of the distance, comparing it to the UK. I mean, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting was when I was in the States, I hadn't really looked at the number of cases per day and deaths per day. And I looked at the chart online, and I tell you, over the last 2 months, it has just dropped. It was like from 100,000 cases a day or 50,000 cases a day, just crazy amounts, to like 2,000 cases a day. And 2,000 cases a day in the United States is nothing.
Yeah, 250 million people, whatever it is.
It's it really made me think, because one of my fears was picking up COVID before we left, and one, either not being able to get on a plane to come back. And we had a whole story about that, I tell you, because Hong Kong has such stringent. This has been one of the most expensive trips. No, this is the most expensive trip I've ever taken in my life. The internet's gotten really dodgy in the last few days, and it's because the hotel is filled up here, and it's not a high-end hotel. So I think the Wi-Fi, we're what they told me at the front desk when I called down earlier, because we had an issue with Tammy's room, is that, with Hong Kong banning all UK, there was a rush of people in the UK. They had like 3 or 4 days to get back to Hong Kong to beat the ban. Okay. And so suddenly all the quarantine hotels. So I guess the hotel is just packed with Brits now.
Flooded.
Or Hong Kong Chinese coming back from the UK. So.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something about the US before that.
What was I saying before we lost the internet?
We were something about an expensive trip.
Oh yeah, this is like
what you had to get through before you get on the plane.
Oh my gosh, yes. Hong Kong has really stringent requirements. Not only do you have to have one of the more extensive COVID tests, you can't just do the quick test. It has to be the lab test, but you also have to have documentation from the lab showing that it is authorized by the government to do these kind of things. And we had tried to go the cheap route, and at the last minute, the cheap route, they didn't send Ethan's response thing, and they didn't send the documentation. They refused to send documentation. And so we're at American Airlines, and the company, they send us a text message that Ethan is negative. Now, there's no way Hong Kong is going to accept a text message that says negative. So we totally miss our flight.
Oh my gosh.
And we're in the airport on the airport Wi-Fi, looking at where we can get same day legitimate lab. Long story short, I call this lab that looked promising. And the lady said, we work with Hong Kong people going to Hong Kong. I know exactly what you need, but it's going to be $300 US a test. So we spent, and then Gabriel was flying out too, and he had to get like a 100-pound test that we had to pre-order for him. So at the airport, I shelled out $1,000 just for COVID tests for the four of us. Insane, absolutely insane. And then obviously we have 2 rooms of quarantine here. And somebody messaged me today on Facebook saying, "Oh, does the government pay for that?" And I was like,
nice.
"Yeah."
Nice try.
So I do have to say though, because we went home for my dad, the family has helped us out, hearing of the high expenses. They the family has very graciously underwritten some of these expenses for us. Helped, and it was good because it was just a number of expenses in and above the normal travel. So
I mean, I can't. I mean, I haven't been back to see my mom since I left 2 years ago, and my dad died 2 weeks before I left. But it's just not viable to try and get back at the moment. The quarantine this side, but also just even trying to get flights, because there's no return flights, because people from South Africa can't spend 1,800 pounds, so an entire month's salary on a 10-day
trip.
It's just and that's that's flights excluded.
For us, like Tammy's going to be in quarantine 3 weeks. I'm in quarantine 2 weeks. We're in the States for 3 weeks. So she's spending 3 weeks in the States and then 3 weeks in a hotel room in Hong Kong. Like suddenly it's a 6-week vacation. And a lot of the work she does it's not like me. It's a different setup. She has to actually be there. So there's all kinds of dynamics involved in this. And COVID has not been easy.
No. But you're obviously glad you went. I can tell that.
Yeah, no, it was a phenomenal trip. It was really, and I would, despite the frustration right now, I'd do it again. Well, it wasn't just because my father had passed. My mom is having some serious medical issues as well. So it was really her heart's desire that the family be at Dad's grave and we do something as a family. And so that really made the decision to do this very simple.
No, sure. I have had some discussions at work as well, whether if I needed to go out, could I just not use it all as leave? Could I also work when I'm there? And because I mean, virtually, unless I go and see a person, the rest of the time I'm online. I work on a VPN, and actually now, because I'm self-isolating my next 2 assessments, I'm doing virtually in any case. So if I did need to go, that I could actually just take the laptop, and even if I don't, I don't need to necessarily work a full day, but at least I can keep some things ticking over. And because at the end of the day, that becomes more important. They said no, fine, we'd make a plan. And you do, don't you? You make a plan.
That's it. You have to figure things out. And fortunately, the organization I work for, and they've been very supportive of me on this. So no complaints there. They've been very gracious, and it's the time of year where it's the easiest to do this.
Yes. I did see your post this morning. Actually, it's completely off topic on Chuck.
No, it was very.
I didn't. Was he ill?
Yeah, he's been ill for a couple, 2, 3, 4 years now. But it's really gotten bad in the last year. He's been working ill for about 3 years. But then it really hit him, the cancer, about a year ago. And especially in the last 3-4 months, it really degenerated fast. And it's like my post I said earlier, one of the reasons really I'm with YCIS is because of Chuck. He
was such a nice guy. I mean, he said to me when I left, he said, if you ever want to come back, you just call me. It was just lovely to deal with. and we both know the organization as well. And in terms of his personable way of working with you, which is
no, it was
very big loss.
He was always a breath of fresh air. And I didn't really highlight one of the pictures I showed, but you'll appreciate this, is we're in London watching Les Miserables.
Oh wow.
We were on a recruitment trip maybe 3 years ago.
Wow.
He had never seen Les Miserables, and
wow.
So it was me, him, and a couple other colleagues, and that's what that picture is on Facebook. And we had such a good night that night, and so, but I'll see him again. We'll see him again. You'll see him again, and he's with the Lord now, and he was always a big encourager of the faith, even within the organization. So he will be greatly missed.
Yeah, for sure.
But I've got I've got my Anglican meeting tonight. I'm getting confirmed next week as an Anglican. Did you know that? Had I told you that?
No, you didn't tell me that. No.
Yeah.
Well, I was baptized in an Anglican church, so it kind of puts us in level footing now, doesn't it?
Yeah. I've got a number of friends in the UK who are kind of on similar journeys over the last few years, and have kind of veered into Anglican territory, or have returned to Anglican territory. And so I'm getting a number of little comments about finally returning to the fold, or joining the fold, not returning but joining the fold, and the one true church, and all in good jest. Now I've been attending St. John's for a while now, and I just started thinking, at what point do I make this a little more official? Do I just kind of keep hovering in the background, or do I, And so I met with the priest a few months ago, and we had a good chat. And I liked everything I heard. And and I've been part of this class even when I was in the States. I would zoom in on the class, and the first week I was in Louisiana. The second week I was in Iowa. The third week I was in Nashville, Tennessee. They were joking. They were getting a tour of America where I was zooming in from. And I've really liked, coming from the evangelical charismatic background, there is, at least from this church's perspective and the priests that are there, there's just such the trajectory of where I'm going. They're just much more receptive to it than where I was coming out of. And I remember meeting with the priest and him saying, we look at the Anglican church as built on a three-legged stool. He said, the three legs is the Bible. We look to the Bible as the inspired of God, but then we also look to tradition and 2,000 years of the church processing what it means to follow Christ. And then he says we use reason. The third stool peg is reason. We apply reason as we wrestle with the issues that we deal with. And I said, wow, coming from my background, that wouldn't be what gels. It's sola scriptura. It's the Bible alone. And he said, I understand that. And he said, well, how do you feel about this, though? And I said, well, after 40 years of evangelical charismatic ism, I said, I'm ready for a little reason to be thrown into my faith walk.
No, I mean, it's not on my heart pool, but I can definitely see the attraction or the magnetism certainly increasingly with the more overtly structured. And by that I mean saying honestly, we have a structure. As opposed to, we don't have a structure, we're doing what the Spirit does, but we clearly have a very clear structure. You know what
Absolutely.
So I think there is something of the honesty behind that, which when you can say that and you're not reliant on someone having to give you money for you saying that, I think it does make a difference.
There's a lot to be said there, Steve. And you and I have talked before. Another thing that attracts me to it is there is a rotation of priests there, and the church is not driven by a personality. It's been there 170 years, and it'll be there another 170 years. And there's no single personality. There's no family running it. I very much enjoy that kind of setup. I have to be honest. While I've been processing this, this is not a quick decision. It's something I've been thinking about for probably 2 or 3 years now. And I remember sitting in a Sunday morning thinking, I don't agree with everything the Anglican Church does. And it just really hit me. Jesus was a Jewish rabbi. And I'm sure there was things within the Jewish religious structure that Jesus was not kosher with.
Yeah.
And yet he still kind of submitted himself to that structure, became a leader within that structure. He operated within that structure despite anything that he might have maybe an issue with. He worked within the system. And so I kind of feel the same way, is that I like, for pretty much, I enjoyed the expression that they are doing at the church. And so I'm going to take the leap.
No, well, cool. I mean, I think it's good it is a belonging thing. I think the reasoning thing is a belonging thing, because if you're in circles that don't value analysis or analytical thinking and reasoning and persuasion, then you don't belong. It's just nothing you can do about it, and you always know it. And so when you find a place that is open to that, then there is a sense of belonging around it, which immediately brings security, which allows you to be yourself, engaged, do all those kind of things as well, which without that kind of belonging, and I think it's just the fellowship is not fellowship, it's just awkward.
No, I agree wholeheartily. Let me ask you, I got about 10 minutes left here before I got to go to my class. Where are you and Gina at? Where are you in your engaging with a corporate church structure?
None.
None
at all. So we cross paths with another family. They've got much younger kids than us, but we spend some time together, and we camp and do other things together as well. And so there's probably a natural conversation that comes in and out of that, but it's not set. Then the kids can probably see the outworking of some form of church family by some of the way in which we can see our kids have connected with some people. We've connected with this person, and it's that you suddenly find out, oh, so and so's brother is one of those Christians, and you just look there and you go, yeah, it's probably a good reason we're getting introduced. We'll just let it flow, and so I also think the UK is quite a different experience in terms of that, because it's a heathen nation, really. Sex is sold on the billboards openly and freely, and so Christianity is shunned. And yes, there are pockets of the Anglican, maybe even Catholic components, but it's all quite staid.
I'll come there and I'll shake it up a little bit.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I guess it's just that I think it's also different for me, because I got saved here, and my first year or 2 years was in low Anglican church, and there's been no desire, I guess, to connect back into that, but quite happy to connect with people from that as opposed to the structure, if that makes sense. So we've seen
one of the things though that's been and for the sake of it, and I wish Tammy was here with me on this, because she probably is much closer to where you and Gina are at. She's joked, should I join this class too? Because I want to make sure we're going to the same heaven. I'm like, are you going to Anglican heaven? I mean, obviously she doesn't believe it's a joke, but she probably tacks much more where you're at. She's really she's very supportive of me doing this, almost like you giving me the support that you are. It's good for you. it's for where you're at, Steve, but I'm just not there.
Yeah.
The thing is, I was listening to Brian Zahn
Mm.
preach from him on podcast recently, and he said something that really I've been mulling over as stuff that Brian Zahn tends to do. It mulls in my
Yeah.
head. And he said, a lot of people these days are not, they're Christians. They want to follow God, but they want to do it separate from a corporate structure. They want it from a church structure. And he says, can people do that? He said, absolutely. You can absolutely follow Jesus without having that kind of commitment or integration with the church. I forget the exact words he says, but essentially you don't have to be part of a church to follow Jesus. But he says, what I will tell you is this. He says, the faith we have is a 2,000-year-old faith that is passed on. He says, I can almost say that if you choose that path, your children will not be followers of Christ, most likely. And I can almost guarantee that your grandchildren will not be. And that's been kind of mulling in my head. I didn't do a quick agree or disagree with that, but I've been trying to think about its application in my own family. And what do you think of that?
I think the data says something different.
Yeah.
I think a sure way of turning a child off Christ is sending them to Sunday school.
Sure.
So I think it's difficult. I think the issue is fellowship and community, because most certainly you are more isolated by not being part of a corporate structure. And the ability to find those connections means you have to trust God in a completely different way. The flip side of that is that if you are in the structure, you have a false sense of security that your children are getting what God wants them to get, or that they are being connected. That's not necessarily true. Actually, could be quite the opposite. When our kids have gone to church-based stuff, because we haven't stopped, if they want to go, I mean, they've gone with some of their friends to stuff. Well, they don't last very long. Because they understand something of grace and the love of God, and so they don't need a sinner's prayer. And so they feel that immediately. They feel the rules, the regulations, the obligations, stuff that comes in quite quickly at that young age. And I think they get bored.
It's always been my biggest problem with church is it's never been particularly exciting for me.
So I think that, but I do see it in terms, and just in terms of, the kids trying to make friends where there is and then, we're looking at finding friends for them and for us with similar value systems. And how do you find that? It's maybe a little bit easier in a country like South Africa, but it's very tough here, because you have a different cultural value system as well as a possible Christian value system. So it's definitely, I would say, if we ended up going back into corporate, it would purely be to try and, just because we're just not managing to find like-minded, and the isolation is damaging to us, which in turn then becomes damaging to our kids.
Right. I've told this story before, Steve, but a couple of years ago, I was with the pastors group here in Hong Kong, and a couple of the pastors were complaining about, they start the church service at 11 a.m., but they usually can't get going till 11:15 because people are talking in the lobby and trying to get them to come in to do worship when they just want to chit chat. And I told them, I said, we're going to see this more and more because people are looking to connect with others. And I said, we want to kind of steer them into our program. And the reality is they can worship at home with music, but even more so I pulled out my phone. I said, the best speakers in the world are on my iPhone. I don't need to go across the city to hear anybody speak. I've got this in my pocket. What I can't do is have a face-to-face conversation with someone who shares my values and my, and so churches are going to have to figure out how to connect people, So
and I think personality, does play a role. Like I can definitely be more isolated than Gina can. And actually probably get more frustrated by meeting people who I think might have the same value system and then don't.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh dear, like actually, sometimes it's easier to connect with someone who doesn't believe in Jesus,
Yeah.
because you get to share in a way that you don't feel like you're being beaten over the head by a baseball bat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to be, like, oh well, that's great, I'm all allowed to evangelize everybody. It's not that. It's just having, a belief. And sometimes it's simple, like, actually I want my kids as part of my life. And so it's great to have our kids sitting around the dining room table with us, and we're all eating together, adults and children. That makes a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon for us.
Yeah.
To be in a place where spend the afternoon with people who don't want that. Like, it doesn't matter if they're saved or not. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have I don't think we've reached any kind of endpoint on it.
Yeah.
Still figuring it out, I guess, and
Yeah.
trusting that God will connect us. And if not, speak to people in Hong Kong and Australia and Canada and once every couple of months.
I talk about wanting to commit more, but then it's going to mean actually going more regularly on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. I mean, I have no idea how we do it. I mean, my kids are at, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, actually Monday to Thursday, they're at sport, and Gina and I are normally splitting up to take them to different places.
Yeah.
Saturday is the same. And then Sunday is the same as well. The system here is not organized around the church.
No, it was when I was growing
up.
When I was growing up, Sunday work was off. There was no sports activities on Sunday.
Yeah.
Church day.
Yeah.
The Anglican church is the shorter services.
Yeah.
If we do the said Eucharist at 8 a.m., it's done at 8:45. It's 45 minutes long. If you do the sung one, which is beautiful, they have the choir. If you come at 9 o'clock, that goes to about 10:15. It's about an hour and 15 minutes with the singing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the longest service they're going to have is about an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Which, that's doable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We used to clock in when I was a kid. We used to clock in at 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's if you weren't on setup.
Oh, forget that. I'm just talking service. I'm not talking about, putting the folding chairs out in the gym.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think, I can see that now, like, it's, if there's a rugby on or an athletics on, that's going to be 2 or 3 hours. There's just no short way around that. I'm like, where would we fit in a 3-hour church service? Actually, even fitting in an hour is a problem. And actually, we've got to trust God that we're going to meet someone at athletics who we can connect with.
Yeah.
And that we're having to look at it quite differently. Because the way in which we're integrating socially is not through that structure. Mm-hmm. And now, probably, even if we wanted to engage in it, I don't know if it'd be possible. We'd most certainly have to we'd have to put our kids out of quite a lot of stuff that is not, it's not like it's excessive.
Yeah.
I'm not, this is not forcing our kids into Saturday tutoring. We're simply going to, athletics training and a meet once a month, but because there's 4 kids, that's a lot of engagement.
Yeah, no, that's a lot. That's a huge amount. That's why I'm enjoying coming into the stage of my life where, if we didn't have Ethan, but just the one kid, I can handle one, and we have a helper, so
go away.
What could I say? It's Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But we don't have grandparents. I always like to say we don't have the grandparents. You don't have the support structure as in other places. But there's one other thing I was going to say. I was just going to add about joining the Anglican Church. One of the things I'm really enjoying, though, before I'm going to have to let you go in a minute because I have to go to my How to Be an Anglican class.
Yes.
That's what Tammy calls it. That's what it's actually a confirmation class. It's a faith begins class. It's actually, I'm really enjoying it. We're having good discussion. They do like about 45 minutes of teaching, and then we break up into Zoom breakout groups.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten to know the same group on Zoom over the last 10 weeks. And it's interesting that all these ideas that I thought were a little radical and progressive are just kind of standard Anglican. It's just wonderful to hear things that I thought I was being all daring in the evangelical church. It's just this is part and parcel.
Yes.
And
yes.
I'm enjoying the practicality for how love and compassion, the fruit of the Spirit, operate within the world, rather than another 4-week series on hearing the voice of God in your life, or finding God's direct will for your life, or some kind of existential thing, rather than how do I love my neighbor? How do I love my enemy? How was Jesus able to do this? And how do we do this in the planet in the 21st century type talks? So much more meaningful to me than what I grew up on.
No, we could probably have a longer discussion around that as well. I had a brief conversation with someone the other day on that, and said I realized somewhere along the line that I was hearing the same story now a few years in a row, and then realizing that the story they were telling was already 20 years old. And going, they're struggling with what I'm struggling with. It's the day-to-day voice. And I think that's what you just, how many times do you need to hear the will of God, the voice of God? It's not, you actually need a little bit of a series, maybe on that, but then it becomes an outworking, and as you fellowship with each other, you learn.
No, that's exactly right. Exactly right.
Anyhow, I am aware of time.
I'm looking at that. I'm enjoying this so much. I want to keep going, but let's continue this with a part 2 soon. We can follow up
if I get a gap.
I hope you don't mind me. I think I can use this for a podcast, because I'm really the last few weeks with my trips and everything, I haven't really done anything, and so this will kind of help me get some material out.
Have a look at it. Do a good edit first. I think there's probably lots of bits and pieces. I'll leave it with you.
We'll pull a few things out, but I think by and large we'll have something here. Anyhow, hey, good to see you.
Okay, Thanks. Too, Steve.
Okay, but let's talk again soon.
Enjoy confirmation. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.